Today we're going to go over ecological dynamics of pitching and how we can use the environment as a coach to help us design better practice sessions. So to athletes here, what if your coach said nothing, but you were still able to get better, right? Would you prefer that, or would you prefer a coach that gives cues every pitch in the middle of a scrimmage or a live at bat situation, or never puts you in any kind of game situation and just expects you to perform without exposing you to those things? And someone who is a dictator and says you must do it one way and one way only, and that's my way? Or does a guide sound a little bit better, to where they kind of guide you in the right direction but allow you to kind of find your own way with their help, right? Would you prefer a coach that adds necessary context to get you ready for your next game? And would you rather co-create practice designs or co-create these sessions to where you feel you can get the most bang for your buck and actually develop throughout a season or throughout an off season? To me, the ecological coaching sounds a lot better, just because I really don't want a coach telling me what to do every pitch. I don't want to go into a game never experiencing really much at all other than live ABs, right? I want more than that. I want more than just a dictator relationship. I want guidance, context, and I want to be able to help and have influence on what I'm doing. Before we get any deeper, we need to understand what ecological dynamics is, or EcoD. Right? It's a framework for understanding skill acquisition, or in simpler terms, a framework for understanding how athletes get better at a certain skill, sport, whatever it might be, how they learn through all of that, how they learn and continue to get better, or maybe why they don't get better, right? A big part of it is perception action coupling, okay? So a lot of people like to use the word reaction. I don't like using it because it implies that every time you input X, you get Y. And we know in sports, from the youth levels all the way through the pros, you're going to see things you've never seen before, and you need to be able to adapt and be ready for it. Okay, perception action. So it involves degrees of freedom, which is very hard to explain step by step because it's a constant cycle and everything's intertwined. But when you perceive, it's basically your perceptual degrees of freedom, what is out there in the environment. Then you have your cognitive degrees of freedom, and then you're kind of determining what information is important. And then you have your motor degrees of freedom, and it's the movements that emerge from the information that's out there. Now, you are perceiving to act and acting to perceive. I got that quote from Emergence. I can't remember if it was Sean Mitzka or Tyler Yerby. I'm sure they both have said it, but two very smart individuals when it comes to ecological dynamics, just in the sport in general. But again, perceiving to act, acting to perceive. Also involves learning through interaction with the environment. Okay, the environment that they are placed in is pretty important because that's where they're learning. You want them in environments that mimic the game. They don't have to be exactly like it, but you want to add slices or parts of it so they can struggle and they can learn through it and honestly interact with what they're going to be interacting with in a game, instead of, you're going to throw a bullpen to a catcher, we're going to go 5 fastballs, 5 changeups, 5 sliders, 5 more fastballs, and then be done. That's nothing like a game. As far as the information that's out there, you're taking away a lot, and the information you're taking out is crucial for the game. If you want to learn more, check out emergentmovement.com. This is basically the Cliff Notes version of ecological dynamics, and even then I've left a lot out, but these are the basic keys of what we're going to need to understand for the rest of this video. So continuing on with key concepts, we have constraints, self-organization, and affordances. So constraints, coaches are really good at constraining athletes right now. I do think they abuse constraints to force certain movements. You want to afford certain movements or invite movement solutions for the athlete to find on their own, not constrain to force movements on athletes, okay? So we're adding constraints to invite certain movements that the athletes will find through self-organization. This does not mean that the coach has no responsibility for saying anything or giving any input. We're just letting the environment and the constraints at play do the coaching first. If an athlete just continues to fail and fail and fail, then we might need to bring their attention to something else, right? Just giving some basic examples here. Now, why is this important for pitchers? Well, every pitcher is different. Every athlete is different. You can say that for across all sports. everyone is different. They're going to move a little bit differently. So adaptability is greater than repeatability because pitching is problem solving. You're going to have a multitude of problems. You need a multitude of solutions. You can't just be going to the same one over and over again. Now, how does environment shape movement? Well, super simple example would be flat ground versus mound. When pitchers are on flat ground, they don't have as much time to get forward because there's no mound to go down. Like, you're not getting down the mound, there isn't one. So arms are usually going to be a little bit late. They might push off their back leg a little bit more, right? The environment is going to shape how you move. This is a super simple example. Then you add a mound. Okay, looks like they normally do when they pitch. Maybe you add a steep mound. Maybe they're flying open a little bit more, or maybe they're not quite utilizing their front leg. Whatever mechanical things you might see are going to change because the environment is different. Presence of an opponent. Okay, this can go one of two directions. The athlete can freeze and they can struggle, they can become tense, and they can flop. Or the presence of an opponent can get them to lock in a little bit better, and they actually do better with an opponent than they do in a typical practice setting where there is no opponent, like a side bullpen. Okay, another thing that can shape movement is target size and location. So if they really struggle with the tight zone, well, maybe you give them a tight zone in practice. So the target that they're trying to hit has shrunken, it's a lot smaller. That might get them to tense up, and then they start aiming the ball. They don't throw it like they normally do because the task changed, right? We're adjusting what they're doing to help influence and invite different movements. So if an athlete is struggling with a tight zone, they start aiming, maybe they get a little bit tense, right? Expose them to that in practice and help them find ways to not have that performance anxiety as they struggle through it, and they can get better and develop. So we need to learn to modify the problem, not the athlete, as basically our first step, any chance you get. We want to change the environment to change the movement. We don't want to change the athlete. Okay, we need to look at movement as functional or not functional. Is it working? Is it getting outs? Or is it not? The athlete is not broken. Athletes are never broken. They just have not been exposed or been allowed to explore different options. They've either been told they must do it this way every single time, or they're trying to fit a mold that just doesn't work for them, right? They've never been exposed to these things before, and they need to learn. When we don't allow learning to happen, we end up with athletes that feel like they're broken because coaches haven't allowed them to learn. They haven't done a good enough job teaching them by exposing them to different environments and different tasks to help with them getting better at the game. We need to teach them to problem solve. The more we focus on just mechanics, or movements, the more you take away from the actual skill and the actual problem that needs to be solved, which is getting outs. How are we going to miss barrels? How am I going to get a ground ball with a runner on first and one out in a crucial situation? Right? How are we going to do those things? By practicing them, problem solving, trying to work through them, not just by perfect mechanics. Now, when it comes to designing constraints or designing practice sessions, we need to think of all three types of constraints. We have task constraints, environmental constraints, and organism or athlete constraints. Now, a lot of coaches, first thing that they go to is the athlete. They might make them a little bit more tired, which is good. Tired before a bullpen so they can get used to being tired when they pitch in a game. Some coaches have brought up like what they're wearing, so making their practice uniforms more like their game uniforms, or simply having them practice in game uniforms. And then everybody's favorite is constraining the throw, taking the legs out, abbreviated arm action, doing super constrained drills, which I think do have a place, but nowhere near as much as they're actually being used. But that's for a different time and a different video, different topic. I like to go straight to task and environment, kind of depending on the athlete, okay? So looking at task, changing the sizes and weights of baseballs, right? That's an easy one to do to help with release point and just the feel of the ball coming out of their hand. If it's different every single time, whether it's oversized, undersized, overload, or underload, they're going to have to make an adjustment. You could also change targets. Easy enough. If you can't get a catcher, maybe you go big target or small target, or set it up in a certain spot and get them to hit different spot. Like, we can change the task quite a bit. Probably my personal favorite would be you can't throw the same pitch 2 times in a row. Too many times in bullpens, coaches are like, all right, we're going to go, it's a scripted bullpen. You're going to throw this many fastballs, this many breaking balls, this many changeups, and then we'll finish with 2 fastballs out of the stretch, whatever it might be. That's nothing like the game, right? Not too many times you're going to throw the same pitch more than 2 or 3 times in a row unless you're facing a hitter that requires it. because they can't hit a certain pitch, well, that's the solution to that problem. But most of the time you're gonna have to mix. So if a guy is struggling going between certain pitches, so for example, throws a really good curveball, then he goes to a fastball and he misses high every time, well, you should probably practice going back and forth with that in your bullpens rather than 5, 5, and 5, right? We need to start mixing it up. As far as environmental constraints goes, variable slopes, kind of talked about it a little bit with flat ground versus mound, right? Exposing them to all different kinds of slopes, because even at the college level, not all mounds are the same, right? We have noise distractions, right? So like just literally the noise of the crowd can cause athletes to feel pressure or feel extra anxiety when really the noise shouldn't be influencing any of their movements. It's non-specifying, but they allow it to because they've never been exposed to it. So coaches can pump noise in the speaker system, maybe invite friends, girlfriends, whatever, to come and watch practice, right? Then there's a crowd there, there's noise, there's people, there's eyes on them, there's people watching, there's extra pressure. And then two of probably the most underutilized constraints when it comes to the environment is time of day and weather. I truly believe that with all these nice indoor facilities, not just in the private sector, but colleges and high schools, athletes are getting soft. They're used to being indoors, on turf, temperature controlled, right? It's comfortable. We need to expose them to good weather, bad weather, rain, all of these different things so that way they're better prepared. Time of day, this is a tough one, especially for schools and teams, because you're limited with when you can use the facilities and all those other things. But if you can, change the time of practice. Get them used to playing or practicing at 1 and practicing at 7, because that's when they play games. Why not practice at those times? When it comes to practically designing these sessions, we got movement prep, explorative, plyos and weighted baseballs, athletic catch play, maybe trying some constrained throws on lower intent days, but truly allowing their warm-up to be exploration based and not just rote repetition doing the same movements over and over again. Let them truly explore what it's like to move in different ways. Whether it's crawls, animal flows, whatever it might be, find ways to add some exploration to their movements. Plyos and weighted balls, great for overload, underload, but also plyos are great because it gives them a different touch to their hand. They're throwing something different. If they're death gripping it, it'll be easier to see. And if it's nice and loose, you'll be able to see that as well. As far as the constraints-led approach, or CLA, right, we have the environment, task, and athlete, which I went over earlier. Too many coaches go straight to the athlete. Okay, we need to be creative and figure out ways how we can change the environment or the task to be able to get them ready for game. Continue to add game-like activities. Whatever that might be, whatever that is for your context of wherever you're at as coaches, try to find a way to do that. If you're stuck indoors, be creative. If you're outdoors, it's easier to get it done. Last part about practice sessions and designing them is getting reflection and feedback from your athletes. I think this is also underutilized because most of the information that I have found the most valuable that I've gotten are from the athletes I train. How would you change this? Did you benefit? Did it at all feel like a game, right? Getting information like that can help you as a coach, again, better prepare your athletes and better understand what works for them, right? Not all athletes are going to need the same thing. So if somebody's working on something specific, you tried something, you ask how they would change it, they tell you, well, why not do it the next time? If they find something is valuable that you're not doing it, it's our job as coaches to try and figure out how we can incorporate that into the practice. Now, how do we increase complexity in these situations when our athletes are finding a lot of success? Well, make the problem more difficult. Add consequences. Find ways to add pressure, right? So if they walk 2 guys in a bullpen, they're done for the day. Even if they only got 8 pitches, well, they're done. So be it. That's it. That's going to happen in a game when you come in relief. You walk 2 guys, you're probably going to get pulled. Don't let them go to their go-to solution. So they need to be able to use their other pitches to be able to get outs. You need a multitude of solutions for a multitude of problems. Find as many ways as you can to get outs. Big thing for coaches here is talk less. Like, let the athletes struggle through whatever they're working on for a little bit. Again, we are guides to them, guiding them in the right direction. We are not dictators telling them exactly what to do. We set up the environment, we set up the practice session, we give them a task, we tell them what their goal is. We let them figure out the rest of it. If they fail too much, then yeah, step in, have a conversation, ask them what's going on, what they're feeling, what they're noticing, what they're paying attention to, or what they're trying to do. when we get into intentions there, right? Like, what are they intending to do? Why are we failing? What are you paying attention to? What's going on? Understanding the athlete's point of view. So some key takeaways here. The environment has the potential to be the best coach ever if you let it. If you as a coach continue to step in the way of the athletes and the environment in which they're learning, you then become the dictator and you are literally getting in their way of learning and getting better. Some people see it as lazy coaching, and I couldn't disagree more, because you're doing more work behind the scenes in preparation for practice to be better for your athletes. And then you still get to coach. If they're failing, ask them why. What's going on, right? We can still ask questions. We're just giving a lot less answers so they can kind of find their own with us guiding them in that direction. Second one is add slices of the game. Pieces of the game whenever you can. I got that from Tyler Yerby at Emergence. Anytime you can add a little slice of whatever they struggle with or a little slice of context, it's better than none. Find a way to do it, even if it's just theoretical. Throwing a bullpen with a guy and say, hey, imagine you got a runner on second, there's 2 outs and the cleanup hitter's up. How are you going to approach this? Then they can start problem solving a little bit. Is it the greatest? No, but it's better than not doing anything at all. Last part is just allowing the athlete to be their own problem solvers, allowing them to struggle and find their own solutions. Again, if we continue to tell them what the solution is, they never learn. They have to struggle through it, right? Practice is almost like the homework. Let them struggle through the homework so that way when they get to the test, they actually know how to go about it. Coaches, just a quick call to action. When you're designing your next practice session, whatever it might be, do something different. Design a practice session completely based off environmental constraints and talk less, right? Try to do everything you can to say significantly less words than you normally would and let the athletes work it out. If you need to intervene to be able to explain how the situation is working or what the situation is or what the context of the situation is or how it's set up, obviously do that. And if they're failing over and over again, then talk through it. But if they fail once, okay, let them just try it again. See if they can figure it out. Add context. Quick example, a remote athlete of mine was really struggling with the pitches that his coach was calling. He didn't really agree with some of the pitches that were called in certain situations. So I just said, well, in your side bullpen, keep track of counts. If you can get a hitter to stand in, have the hitter stand in, and then have your pitch comm on and have your coach call pitches. So that way you can get used to pitches that he's going to call in certain situations, and you already know ahead of time what he's going to go with. And that way you're more mentally prepared for what you're going to face in game. Now, like I've said before, if you want to learn any more about the underpinning theories of ecological dynamics just in general to get a much better understanding than what you're going to get in this video, check out emergentmovement.com. They have a lot of courses that are really kind of a steal for the amount of information that you're getting from them. And then there are free blogs as well to, again, dive deeper into all of these things.